Hey guys, my name's Pocket and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be continuing with our video series on the Season 11 item changes. Our next couple of videos are going to focus on mid lane. In this one, we're going to talk specifically about Lethality items. These are items that are useful on assassins and also some burst damage ADCs. The next video that we're going to bring out will be focusing on ability power items, so hit subscribe if you want to make sure you catch up with that one, and we're just going to get straight into it. So, lethality items. I've split these up into 3 categories. The changed items. These will be items that if you've played League before, you'll already be familiar with, and they've just been changed for Season 11. The completely brand new items. And then finally, we're going to talk about the mythic items. Mythic items are a brand new type of item. So I've kind of segregated these on their own so we can really go over exactly what it means to be a mythic item instead of the normal items, which are known as legendary items. I'll put timestamps in the video description if you want to get to anything specific, and we'll just hop straight into the changed items. Now, the first changed item that we're going to talk about is Umbral Glaive. Umbral Glaive has been barely changed really. Its base stats and anti-ward passive are exactly the same, but now it builds from Caulfield's Warhammer. It offers 20 ability haste instead of 10% CDR, and it costs 2,800 gold. This is quite a substantial price change. I think it's definitely making Umbral Glaive a support item. I don't think many mid laners and assassins are going to want to buy this anymore. Its base stats are just too low for the amount of gold that it costs, and although the anti-ward passive is fantastic, vision control isn't really the main priority of mid lane and jungle assassins, so I'm expecting to only really see supports build this. Our next changed item is Yumu's Ghostblade. Yumu's Ghostblade, much like Umbral Glaive, hasn't really been changed. It still grants the same amount of out of combat movement speed, and the active still grants movement speed just like it used to. However, it no longer gives any haste. Instead, they've bumped up its AD to 60 and its price to 3,000 gold. Now, I'm still expecting to see Yumu's in play, although that meta hasn't really settled since the item changes dropped. Roaming mid lane assassins have not gone away, and I think Yumu's is going to be pretty big here. Other than that, it's just the old Yumu's that you're used to, so let's move on. And we're going to move on to probably the least changed item in the entire section, and that's Edge of Night. It's got an updated icon, and it now gives 5 less AD than it used to. It still gives 10 lethality, 325 health, and a single use spell shield every 40 seconds. Finally, Sanguine Blade. Sanguine Blade provides 50 AD, 10 lethality, and now instead of lifesteal, it has physical vamp. This is pretty much what it says on the tin. You heal from all physical damage that you deal. So it's not necessarily like lifesteal, where you only heal from auto attack damage or on hit damage. Any physical abilities will heal, but any magic damage dealt either through abilities or items will not heal you. The passive is exactly the same. You gain buffs to lethality and attack speed when you're near fewer than 1 enemy. Now, a little addition to this section is Lord Dominic's Regards. This is not a lethality item. It's a flat percentage armor penetration item that's gone through a number of changes, but it's still probably going to be useful on lethality assassins when they're going into team comps that have a huge amount of armor. It now only gives you 30 attack damage instead of 45, and it only gives you 25% armor penetration rather than 35%. But now it actually gives you 20% critical strike chance and gives you bonus damage based on the health difference between you and your enemy. I think this is really meant more for ADCs than it is for assassins, and that's because of our next item and the first item in our new item section. That item is Cyrilda's Grudge. Cyrilda's Grudge offers 45 attack damage, 30% armor penetration, and 20 ability haste. I believe this is the actual replacement for the old Lord Dominic's Regards. It has much closer stats, and ability haste is something that assassins and mid laners tend to love. It also offers a passive. Damaging abilities slow enemies by 30% for 1 second. This is absolutely massive, especially when the assassin is trying to run somebody down and stop them being able to get away. I think this item is extremely powerful, and it's been one of the core components of the current hype around lethality assassins because it gives such good base stats plus 20 ability haste. This is something that we're going to touch on a little later on, but I think this item is something that you're definitely going to have to consider in any game where you see that the enemy is building armor. Our next new item is Serpent's Fang. Serpent's Fang provides 60 AD and 18 lethality. Its passive allows you to deal bonus physical damage whenever you deal damage against shielded enemies. It's important to note that this won't work against magic shields because it will only proc if you deal physical damage to the shield, and obviously you can't deal physical damage to a magic damage shield. Obviously, this is going to be a bit more of a niche item. At first, I thought this might be a relatively niche item, specifically going into enemies that have a lot of shielding. But then I noticed that this item actually has a fantastic build path of Serrated Dirk plus Pickaxe, and it costs only 2,800 gold. This makes it quite efficient based solely on gold and base damage stats. And with the amount of shielding in League right now, I do expect to see this item quite a lot. The damage that it deals is a flat 50 plus 40% of your bonus bonus AD. So once again, it's really going to scale well with the type of people that are building this just flat AD damage build. And finally, our last new item is the Collector. The Collector provides 45 AD, 20% critical strike chance, and 18 lethality. Now, once again, at first I thought maybe this is aiming more at ADCs. It's giving you that 20% critical strike chance, and that's not normally a stat that you want to see on burst damage assassins. However, the passive executes champions below 5% of their maximum health. You don't even actually have to damage them below 5%, you just have to get them to 5%. This is absolutely huge. I mean, you're basically taking 5% of the maximum health of any enemy that you deal damage to away. This makes it easier to burst down squishy targets, and also a massive amount of damage into tanks that have a high max health. I expect this to be pretty exceptional on many assassins, and actually I think that we may be seeing it on assassins that get a little bit behind or who aren't snowballing as hard as they may want to, because that 5% max health execute, it's really going to help them keep up and keep the ability to one-shot squishy targets. I think any of us here who have played assassins before, if you get a little bit behind and then you end up not even being able to one-shot the squishy support, it can feel very, very bad to play your champion, watching a Soraka run away on a tiny little bit of health. So hopefully this item will be useful in that regard, which will give it some great situational ability. So now we're done for the legendary items. To finish up, we're going to talk about the mythic items. Now, mythic items are a unique item. This means that you can only ever build one mythic item. If you build one of these items, you will be unable to build the other items, unless of course you sell it. So we'll start off with an item that we all know and love, and that's Duskblade of Drakthar. Duskblade of Drakthar still grants AD, ability haste, and lethality, but the big change, and the thing that really sets this item apart as a mythic item, is that its passive grants invisibility whenever somebody that you damage recently dies. This is absolutely massive on so many champions, especially melee AD assassins. If you have to dive into the enemy team, going deep into the backlines in order to one-shot their ADC or whoever you think the threat is, you now gain a burst of invisibility that allows you to get out unharmed. I've been seeing this used on people like Pyke and Shaco, and it just makes them so slippery and so hard to lock down. It's an extremely fun item and an extremely powerful item. I really do expect to be seeing this quite a lot. Duskblade of Drakthar also has a mythic passive. This passive grants 5 ability haste per legendary item that you own. Once again, we're going to come back to this a little bit when we do our conclusion on these items, but I'll give you a little hint. Ability haste is pretty easy to come by in an assassin build. The next item that we're going to talk about is the brand new Prowler's Claw. Prowler's Claw also grants AD, lethality, and ability haste. It actually grants 3 more lethality than Duskblade at 21, but 10 less ability haste at only 10 ability haste. This makes its base stats a little better if all you need is pure damage, and it also has a damage-based active ability. Its active ability is Sand Swipe. After a brief cast time, you will dash in a line through the target enemy's location. Upon completing the dash, you'll deal 100 plus 30% bonus AD physical damage to whoever you targeted, and you will increase your damage dealt to them by 15% for the next 3 seconds. Now, when I was originally going through the Duskblade passive, I really thought that was going to take over the game. However, Prowler's Claw is absolutely fantastic on burst damage assassins. It gives you a dash to get in, and then it increases all of your damage by 15% for 3 seconds. So if you're somebody like a Zed who's just going to shit out all of his abilities in one big go and then want to leave the situation, this is probably the item for you. Not only is it the highest lethality item in the game right now, but that 15% damage buff for the 3 seconds that you're actually enacting your burst damage is absolutely huge. Also, its mythic passive empowers all of your other legendary items with 5 lethality. This means that if you have 4 other legendary items aside from your mythic item and your boots, that this item will give you 41 lethality. That's absolutely insane. We've never had an item give anywhere near to that, and I thoroughly expect this to be the snowball choice. I am just so fed, I can do what I want, get in there, delete everybody, and then leave of my own accord. Who needs invisibility? And our final item is Eclipse. Eclipse gives 55 attack damage and 18 lethality, just like Duskblade, but instead of granting ability haste, it grants 10% Omnivamp. Omnivamp heals you for all damage dealt from any source. It also has a passive. If you hit an enemy champion with 2 separate attacks or abilities within 1.5 seconds, you'll deal 8% of the target's maximum health as bonus physical damage, and it will grant you 30% bonus movement speed. It will also grant you a shield. The shield is much bigger if you're a melee champion than a ranged champion, but I'm still expecting this to be seen on ranged champions quite a bit as well. The mythic passive for this item empowers your other legendary items with 4% armor penetration. I think with the unique passive dealing percentage max health damage and the mythic passive giving you armor penetration, penetration. This item is clearly aimed to be used into team comps that have a lot of tanks. The Omnivamp will help you stay alive in the more extended fights if the enemies just aren't one-shottable, and the max health damage and the armor penetration is obviously just going to give you a lot more damage to high HP, high armor tanks than it is to squishies. So I'm more than likely expecting this to be a bit of a niche item, kind of item that you pick up when you notice that it'll work really well into the enemy team. However, there are some people that just synergize super well with it. Personally, I've been having a lot of fun using this item with Senna, even though the shield and the cooldown of the passive are nerfed because she is a ranged champion. It just synergizes so well with Senna's own passive that deals max health damage when you hit them twice in a short period of time. I think this is something that we're going to have to see where it settles, but for most people, I'm expecting it just to be specifically into high tank team comps. And we're done for the lethality items. So what does this really mean? What can we take from all of this? Well, firstly, I think people that build lethality, specifically AD assassins, have got a really good time with this item change. They've got so many options now. And I think compared to, say, control mages, or especially to tanks, who have really got the short end of the stick with this new item selection, I'm expecting assassins to do really well from it. Specifically, something that I wanted to talk about is that a pretty typical assassin build with Dusk Blade, cooldown boots, and just a normal selection of the legendary items ends up with AD assassins having well over 100 ability haste. Now in old terms, that's equivalent to over 50% cooldown reduction, closing in on 60. That's absolutely massive, and it's something that I really think will have to be balanced. Either they're going to have to bring back ability haste that is granted from these items, or they're going to have to tone down the base cooldowns on assassins to allow them to scale into these items. Either way, they feel really strong right now, so I suggest you just get into it, try some of these items out, try and pick them into the kind of team comps that they might be useful for, and really just give it a go. In our next video, we're going to be talking about ability power items, specifically trying to talk about what this is going to mean for APCs and mid laners. So hit subscribe if you want to catch up with that, and thank you very much for watching.